I got to play Star Wars Zero Company early, and having gone into it with almost no expectations, I'll tell you exactly what I thought. Big thank you to EA and to the devs at BitReactor for letting me get my hands on the early review copy of the game. I was not paid to review it. I'm not even obligated to make this video, and all the thoughts and opinions that you're going to hear will be my own. But they did let me play it early, so gotta say thank you. The version of the game I got to play was an early build on Steam, which is actually not my platform of choice, and although I was free to capture my own gameplay, because of hardware limitations, I couldn't capture the high quality footage that I like using for my videos, so the footage that you see on screen is the B-roll that they provided to me. Just mentioning it because you might see this footage on other videos too. But with the disclaimers out of the way, make sure you like the video and consider subscribing if you're new, and let's check it out. Star Wars Zero Company is basically a squad management fantasy where you build a team of mercenaries and complete small-scale missions in the backdrop of the Clone Wars. You play as a disgraced former Republic officer named Hawks, and you lead the team by recruiting new members, upgrading your base, and completing combat missions with the squad. And to be honest, I had a lot more fun than I was expecting to have. So I'm just going to go through every key gameplay point and just really talk about it, and then I'll come back and talk about the pros, the things that I liked about what I played, and then some of the negatives about what I played, and then just give my final verdict after the fact. I'm very new to strategy games, and we all heard about the similarities to XCOM leading into this, but after spending some time with it, yeah, this is 100% Star Wars XCOM. The gameplay loop consists of a preparation phase where you customize your operators, upgrade weapons and items, and get ready for the next mission, and then the actual mission phase where you complete the combat objectives. There is so much that actually goes into this game, between the different customization options, the combinations of weapons, traits, and classes, and just the structure of your squad. It's one of the biggest strengths of this game actually is the replay factor, just because of how many different ways you can play and with how much freedom you actually get to create your team. You can either stick to the storied characters that join the squad during the campaign, or you can create completely new custom characters from scratch, and they're all fully customizable. Once you've got your squad set up, you take them into the combat missions, which are the main gameplay experience of Zero Company, and you test out the synergy and see how well you made your team. During the combat missions, every member of your squad gets 3 action points they can use to make moves, and the gameplay flow is using up all of these action points until you have no more moves left. Action points are spent to either relocate the operator, fire your weapon, or use abilities and items, and you get complete freedom and control over the order you make these moves in. When all the action points are used up, you pass turn to the opponent and then let them make their moves, and that's the flow of battle, is going back and forth between turns, making moves, and trying to outmaneuver each other. It's a pretty slow-paced style of gameplay, but it's also nice because you can really take your time and think about each move that you're going to make. Every action point counts, and it's really satisfying putting a plan together and seeing it actually happen by making the right decisions in the moment. The action points are the primary resource that you use during a turn, but there's also a secondary resource that regenerates over time called Advantage, and it's arguably more important because it's always coming back over the course of a turn. You gain Advantage every time you get a hit, and this is the resource that you spend to use your operator's ultimate abilities. These are game changers, like an AoE rocket launcher that can take out multiple enemies at once, or giving your squad an additional action point to extend your turn. Action points are your finite resource, while Advantage is theoretically infinite, although in practice it doesn't really work that way. The actual objectives that you're doing vary between missions. They can be either to take out all of the enemies, exfil your entire team, or to rescue a downed operator. The objectives themselves are simple, but it's the way you accomplish them that shows this game's complexity and depth. There are so many different combinations you can make in this game, and half the fun is finding them. For example, a favorite team combination that I was using during my playthroughs was a heavy unit that can taunt the enemy and direct all incoming firepower at them, and a gunslinger unit which can move around the field and take out multiple enemies in a single turn. By taunting the enemy and directing all of that firepower at the heavy, the gunslinger could stay safe and do what it had to do. And these are the kinds of combinations I'm talking about. You can find different combinations between the classes and the weapons. You can find combinations between weapons and traits, getting different classes that work well together on the same squad, just stuff like that. And there's really so much to it that no two playthroughs will ever be the same. And that's especially true when we get to the Den, which is Zero Company's home base and base of operations. This is where we go in between missions. This is the preparation phase I talked about earlier. Here we can do a number of upgrades to either our squad or to home base itself. While at the Den, we can recruit new members to Zero Company. We can level up the members that we already have and give them new abilities and make them stronger. The armory is where we equip and upgrade our weapons, and there's even a customization table right next door. And it feels like home base grows as you play the game. You can add more facilities to the Den, like a medical bay that lets you heal injured operators, a droid bay that lets you recruit astromechs onto the team, and a bunch of other stuff. You can also just walk around and chit-chat with the different members of your team and get to know them. You can get little bits and pieces of backstory and lore by doing this, and you can also unlock character-specific missions by speaking to them at certain times. The centerpiece of the Den is the holo table though, and this is where you go to begin your missions. There's two types of missions. There's the tactical combat missions that we've talked about already, and then there's the non-combat missions, which are called operations. These are basically just multiple choice text dialogues, and depending on your choice, you can earn either different rewards or determine the direction that future combat missions go in. And this plays into the replay factor of the game, is you can go back and make a different choice on these operations and change the way the game moves forward from that point. It doesn't change anything in the story. It's more things like how the opponents behave during combat missions. Either they can deal more damage, or they'll get some kind of bonus or boost. Things like that. The story will always stay the same though. There's an added layer of fun to these missions in the influence mechanic. Both the operations and the combat missions are placed on a specific zone on the galaxy map, and by completing those missions, you gain influence in that zone. With enough influence, you can gain levels and obtain rewards that you wouldn't get otherwise. It's allegedly going to be impossible to max out your influence in every single zone in a single playthrough, so this is just another reason why the replay factor is so huge with this game. You can go back and focus on specific zones to get particular rewards that you want. With zone influence and the operations, there's only so much you can do in a single cycle. Operations cost a unique resource called intel, and once you run out, you can't do any more operations that cycle. You have to do a tactical combat mission to get some more. There are opportunities to get some bonus intel in the form of the third-person exploration sections, and this was the part of Zero Company that really took me by surprise. I knew this was going to be a strategy game going into it, but I didn't expect this third-person, almost action RPG style of gameplay. It's very limited in what it accomplishes, and I'll talk about it a little bit more later in the video, but there are opportunities to get some bonus advantage going into the tactical combat mission, and there's opportunities to pick up some bonus intel that will carry over into the next cycle. There's so much that I could talk about gameplay wise, but I am limited on time with this video in particular. I will have many more videos talking about the gameplay to come, but for this review I gotta keep it short. So let's talk about some of the general pros, the things that I really liked in this game. As a novice to the strategy genre, I think this was an excellent jumping off point for anybody who's getting into it for the first time. There are some aspects of this game that will throw new players for a loop. For example, the chance to hit mechanic. That was something that took me a little bit to get used to, although I did find some similarities between it and other games that I've played, like Pokemon, for example, where you have certain attacks with less than 100% accuracy, and it's really an RNG game where your attack either hits or it misses, and you just have to live with that. It's kind of the same story here, and that's a bit of a learning curve to get over. But all in all, if you're new to the strategy genre, I think this is an excellent game to get started with it in. There is so much replayability in Star Wars Zero Company. You can go back and make an entirely different squad than the first one you made. You can make a squad of all droids if you want. You can make a squad of all medics, You can do whatever you want. The customization is virtually limitless. The gameplay is extremely deep, and it's going to be really easy to sink hours into this game. So the replay factor is excellent. The fact that the game is set in the Clone Wars era is really, really nice. It's a familiar setting, it's safe, and in recent years, it's kind of felt like Star Wars has tried to stay away from the Clone Wars. So the fact we're coming back to it is really satisfying, and it was an excellent choice for this game's campaign, which itself was a huge highlight. I think the campaign has excellent new lore additions that are really going to expand this era of Star Wars. The villains in this game, the Infinite Coil, are a pretty cool addition to the lore. They're this separatist cult. I'm not sure if they're a dark side cult just yet. I didn't get that far in the playthrough. But it's not your typical Jedi versus Sith conflict. These guys are bringing something new to the table, and it's fresh. I like it. So the lore is cool, the story is really cool so far, and even the cameos were surprisingly good. I won't spoil anything in this video, but just know that the cameo appearances that I saw during my playthrough were awesome. They were really tastefully done, and the one that I got to experience will for sure be a crowd pleaser. Now, for some of the things that I think could have been done a little bit better, my biggest criticism of what I got to play is the fact that there were no additional game modes in that early preview build. I only got to play through the early part of the campaign. Now, this could just be because it was an early build. Maybe they want to hold off on showing more game modes for when the game actually releases. If that's the case, I will recant this criticism, but at least from what I saw, it would have been nice to have the option to play a challenge mode or just something outside of the story mode. It could even be a situation where you unlock certain missions after finishing your initial playthrough. And since I was only able to play up to a certain point, it makes sense why I didn't see that stuff. So hopefully there will be additional game modes when the game drops. Another thing that disappointed me was the customization, which is deceptively shallow. The appearance customization is actually pretty good, meaning the way the face looks, the character model's height, their skin color, the species. That's all pretty decent, and you have a lot of options and freedom to do what you want there. What I wasn't a big fan of was that it felt more like I was messing around with a bunch of presets as opposed to true customization. And the best example I can give is with the tattoos. For example, if you find a face tattoo that you like, you can choose that tattoo, but you can't exactly do much with it. You can't resize it, you can't choose where on the face that tattoo goes, it just is what it is. The only thing you can change about it is the color. In fact, that's the strongest part about the customization, is how you can change the color of different parts of the outfit, and you can make it a little bit more unique in that way. So I would have liked to see just a little bit more depth with the customization. And the last point of criticism that I have is just with the exploration sections, which I think were a huge missed opportunity. I honestly didn't even expect the game to have those third-person exploration sections before some of the missions, so it's a huge bonus that it even has it to begin with. I just think they could have done a little bit more with it and actually given the players a chance to explore a little bit. The way they had it set up in the preview demo is that it was very obvious and straightforward, where if you just go straight, you'll find exactly what you're supposed to find and go exactly where you're supposed to go. It would have been nice to have a few curveballs thrown in there, like the bonus that gives you some advantage before the match. Have that tucked away behind the stairs or something, so that I have to actually turn around and look around for it a little bit, instead of the game holding your hand and showing you, hey, there's this thing you should look at right here. That's really all I've got to complain about when it came to my time with this game. I actually really enjoyed it, despite the fact that I had to play on the absolute lowest graphics settings, and that Steam and PC are just not my platforms of choice. As a PlayStation player, I cannot wait to get my hands on this on console. But ultimately, I had a great time with it. I think this game is a solid 7.5 out of 10, if not an 8 out of 10, as it stands right now. If you're a fan of the strategy genre, I know you're going to eat this up. If you're a fan of Star Wars, you're probably going to eat this up. Big bonus if you're a fan of both. And I think this game's at a bit of an advantage because I don't think people are expecting too much out of this. I definitely wasn't. I had very low expectations going into it, and I was pleasantly surprised. So thank you guys for checking out my review. Once again, thank you to EA, Respawn Entertainment, and BitReactor for involving me in the early preview. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. This has been Star. Keep shining, baby.